We all use them, but if you care about being able to see original movies and TV shows the way you remember them, I'm here to tell you that you absolutely positively can't rely on streaming services. See you on the other side. I'm dead center of Gen X, and I like to think of our generation as the first to really be able to collect hard copies of all the media we consumed. Like our older siblings, we had albums, but we eventually turned them into cassettes, which became CDs. We were the first to have VCRs in our homes at the same time cable TV was exploding. So as kids, we began recording and collecting our favorite TV shows and movies. Before then, your only hope of rewatching a movie or TV show you loved was if a network had a designated movie night or had reruns of the show during the summer. We had stacks of recorded content everywhere to make sure we could watch things when we wanted. It was completely natural for us to begin collecting movies when studios started lowering the prices to appeal to home buyers and not just video stores. And just like albums, we might have copies of the same movie on VHS, then DVD, then Blu-ray, and beyond. Nearly every Gen X apartment in the late 80s through the mid-90s had specialized racks designed to hold all the crap we owned, which sat right next to our TVs. Owning physical media was second nature for us as a generation. And that all seemed to change when streaming services popped up. In Netflix, you had what amounted to an online video store, a staple for us, and for a small monthly fee, you could suddenly access what felt like an unlimited amount of content from across movie studios and genres. It began to feel silly having huge racks of tapes and discs taking up space, not to mention the various players in your entertainment center, when all you had to do was click a button on your remote to watch the same thing. So most of us began to get rid of what felt like our unneeded collections. I'm no exception. I mean, it made sense at the time, right? And as Netflix became a monster, movie studios realized they were leaving tons of money on the table. So rather than allow Netflix to monopolize this and have access to their content, they ended those contracts and set up streaming services of their own. This is where the cracks started to show. Instead of one centralized streaming service which had everything, as consumers, we had to make decisions about which service we'd subscribe to and which ones we wouldn't. And that meant we no longer had access to certain studios' content. And just as things began to splinter, the purge happened. Well, to be honest, it actually started several years before, but most of us had no clue until the Summer of Love in 2020, which seemed to kickstart worldwide mass insanity. The people who had written and created nearly all movies and TV shows, who happened to be the most progressive people in Western civilization, were suddenly rushing to genuflect to the altar of Twitter activism and started begging forgiveness for daring to have made content the party currently found offensive in the day's climate. In addition to a myriad of pathetic, groveling apologies, we instantly had movies and TV shows yanked off streaming services in an effort to atone for the perception of past sins. And when things weren't yanked entirely, they were altered or had pathetic warning labels placed on them to help prevent triggering events for a population which suddenly seemed made out of tissue paper. Look, without derailing the video right here, let me simply say that I personally am against the idea of censorship in nearly every case. I don't believe in the concept of bad words, just words best suited for certain audiences. I think the idea that certain words are so bad that just making those sounds with your mouth is a societal sin, regardless of the context or intent, is fucking absurd. I think that attempting to make certain words taboo like this, especially when they're only taboo for some and not all, gives them power rather than neutering them. Given that, I'm not going to spend any time arguing whether or not any of these things should have been removed or altered or received a warning label of any kind. None of them should have. And I mean none. But many of them have been, and many more still will. And as this continues to happen, they become harder and harder to find in their original forms, or to find at all. Likewise, there have been high-profile literary works that have come under this same scrutiny. Most notably Dr. Seuss, Ian Fleming's James Bond series, Agatha Christie's works, and most of the work of Roald Dahl. Imagine being an author who's been an international bestseller and been influential to countless fans over generations, only to have talentless hacks in the future take your works and bend and shape them to better fit what they consider to be acceptable to modern audiences.
Fuck all that.
In publishing, this is simply known as sensitivity reading, and it's wormed its way into every corner. We tend to notice when a world-renowned dead author has their works desecrated, but what we don't see are all the current authors having the very same thing done to their works in real time. And this very same thing is happening in TV and movie studios, where screenwriters are having their scripts read by groups of people whose only real expertise is being a particular sex, or skin color, or specialized demographic, because their only real qualification is what their lived experience can bring. Never mind, they know fuck all about writing. The more I read about this, the more I'm reminded of this scene in Amadeus.
Well, decidedly that. An excellent effort.
It is new. It is, isn't it, sire?
Yes, indeed.
So, then you liked it. You really liked it, sire.
Occasionally, it seems to have, how should one say? How shall one say, Director?
Too many notes, Your Majesty.
Exactly. Very well put. Too many notes.
I don't understand.
As much as I'd like to do a deep dive here, I'll simply point you to Disparu's channel and his video titled "This Career Destroys Entertainment," because I think it's the best explanation of what's taking place behind the scenes. He did a fantastic job on this topic, and you need to understand this to fully grasp my point here. So I think this 30 minutes is well worth your time. A link to his video is in the description here. Tell him I sent you. I realize that for many of you, this may come as a total shock. The idea that studios would alter their own titles or make it impossible for fans to have access to their original works makes no sense at all. Hey, I agree, but regardless, it's 100% happening, so act accordingly. Given all this, it's become crystal clear that the idea of owning nothing and being happy is just a talking point for people that want to ultimately be able to control what you can and cannot access. Although we didn't see it at the time, streaming services were the gateway drug for most of us. And we need to understand that while they may have their uses, being the sole repository for our pop culture can't be one of them. In most cases, they're just the studio, and they've already begun carving away at their titles to appease activists. The shows you remember and love in their original formats are fading away, as modern-day Winston Smiths gleefully toss them down the memory hole. It's time to become today's version of the Library at Alexandria. Revive that desire you once had to collect physical media, because it's actually important now. Keep in mind that in many cases, things have already been altered and updated in new releases of hard copies, so your best bet is to find good quality used copies of these things. Most flea markets and antique stores will have sections of used DVDs and Blu-rays. Same goes for old books, and of course there's always eBay. You usually can't go wrong getting movies from 10 or more years ago, but double check to make sure anything newer hasn't already been altered before you bought it. I'd also suggest checking out Rob's movie collection on YouTube. Rob does a fantastic job cataloging what he has and where he's bought things. He's got a great channel that you should check out. So if you want to ensure that these things still exist, and if you want to make sure you have the ability to show them to your kids the way you remember them, the way most creators intended them to be seen or read, then it's really up to you to hold on to them at this point. The current copyright holders just can't be trusted to make them available anymore. Good luck and happy hunting. Until next time, thanks for watching.